In a desperate attempt to adapt to the damage that the pandemic has unleashed on the economies of states around the country, some governors are now taking a rather unorthodox response to the crisis by mandating huge cuts to the salaries of political appointees and that of the governors themselves. We'll be discussing why this policy is gaining serious popularity with the citizens and how global oil prices factor into this. Can we trust these politicians, or this is just another public relations campaign taking advantage of the ongoing crisis? Stick around to find out. This unusual response to the pandemic, and unusual particularly when it comes to the case of Nigerian politicians, started with Seyi Makinde, that's the governor of Oyo State, when he decided that they were going to have about 40% cuts to the salaries of political appointees in Oyo State. So that's how this entire thing started. And now Fayemi in Ekiti State has decided that both his own salary and the salaries of his appointees are going to be slashed by as much as 50%. So that's what he has decided to do as a way to free up resources for the fight against the pandemic in this state, and also so that they wouldn't have to result into any sort of situation where they would have to be cutting the salaries of workers. So it's one of those things. It's actually the reason, that's the main story about it. Now we're going to be going into the analysis of how this thing is happening, why it is happening, and if there is any sort of skepticism we should have towards these actions. Now you have to start with the fact that this is a very great thing that is happening. Now, even without COVID-19, this should be done. We need to have some slashes to the salaries of all these political appointees and all these, generally speaking, politicians in Nigeria, both in the states and in the national level. They have to have their salaries cut. This thing has been said several times, talking about senators, talking about House of Reps members, all of them, even the president. These people are taking way too much salaries per month. Way too much. They are supposed to be servants. They are supposed to be our servants. We elected them to go into the place of power and act on our orders. The things we ask them to go and do, that's what they are supposed to be doing. So essentially, they should be servants, not in quotes rulers. But what we have now is a power structure of rulers dictating what happens to we the peasants. So that's the situation on ground. Now this should become a national policy. Like I said again, it has to become a permanent situation and become a national policy all over. We are giving these people way too much. And then we get to the question of, is this just a ruse? Is this just a PR campaign? That's what it looks like in a way if you look at it from some perspective, because what of the bonuses and the allowances that these people are collecting? As much as I understand it, most of the amounts of money they collect don't come from the salaries. Most of all the millions that they collect per month actually come from the allowances and the bonuses that they collect. Bonuses, allowances for wardrobe, allowances for feeding, so many allowances, almost completely useless allowances. These people should be servants of the people. Now, this also explains one of the reasons why it is almost a do or die affair for them to get to those positions, because they know they stand to make a whole lot of cash from that. Now, if we slash the salaries of all these people and cut away all these bonuses and allowances, it's going to end up leaving only those people who have the heart to serve the people to go there. And all these grifters and all these charlatans are going to be kicked out of the place, because it's not going to be worth their time and their money. It's not going to be worth it for them to strive to get to that position. So you're going to have people who are going to be as honest as human beings can get to go to that position and do the job for the people. That's exactly what we want. That is exactly what we want, because think about it, all the money these people get paid are coming from the taxpayers and coming from the money they make from the national petroleum systems and everything like that. So it's basically the money of the people that are using to pay these people just to sit down there, and for the most part they don't do much. Talking about those people in the House of Assembly, they don't do much, and not even all of them go to the House of Assembly regularly to sit down and debate on all these key issues. So these people are just ripping us off in some areas. Now I understand there are some hardworking people among them, that's true for the most part, but we have a whole lot of stragglers, a whole lot of lazy bums in those places of power, and we really need to take a cut to their salaries permanently. That's how it should be, so that things will become a little more equitable in the country. But there's also another side to it. If this is just a PR stunt, especially in Ekiti, you have to expect that the opposition is going to come out swinging and condemn everything and is going to expose everything as soon as possible. So maybe it's not a PR stunt, maybe they're actually sincere about it, who knows? But just one thing that is sure is that the opposition is going to be coming out and they will be criticizing them, even though they do it themselves. That's just it. All the politicians in Nigeria are basically the same. Talk about APC, talk about PDP, they're basically the same set of people. It's the same set of people that came from PDP that went into APC. The same set of people from APC went back into PDP. They are basically birds of a feather. These people are the same. There's no distinction. There's no ideological distinction between APC and PDP. Unlike in those developed countries where you have people on the right and the people on the left, you have people who are conservatives, you have people who are liberals. But in this place, it's basically nothing like that. It's just the same set of people with the same ideologies, and it's only depending on the party where they're going to have the most advantage, politically speaking. That's the only thing that really determines the party they're going to be. They swing from parties to parties depending on the convenience. That's just the situation on ground. And now, if this is actually a genuine gesture, that is, these governors are actually slashing their salaries and it's not a ruse, it's not just a PR campaign, what are the things that are attached? You have to understand that drop in oil revenue for Nigeria is a very major factor in this. If there is no big oil revenue coming into the country, especially when you remember that we decided to make our budget for 2020 on expecting the oil price to be around $57 per barrel, and now it is around $30 per barrel, almost half of what we budgeted. So which means we are not having enough revenue for the country, and you know that oil seems to be the main source of revenue for Nigeria. So it means the allocations that will be going to the states are going to be smaller. The allocations going to Ekiti State is already very low to start from the beginning. Extremely low to start from the beginning. Some people even say that it is probably the lowest allocated state in Nigeria. That is, it's getting the lowest federal allocation in Nigeria. That's why some people call Ekiti State the poorest state in the country. But forget about that. Ekiti also has very little IGR, internally generated revenue. So that's it. So which means all the sources of making money have been completely strangled during this period. And then when you add the fact that those people who should be the taxpayers or the tax base for the state in Ekiti State are not working essentially at this moment. Talk about those people in the hospitality industry. Talk about those people in the tourism industry. Talk about all these people, hotels, schools, whatever you call it. All these things that generate money for the state government are shut down at this moment, which means there's not going to be enough money in the coffers of the government for them to keep paying the outstanding amounts of salaries for state workers, paying all those things. So that's one of the reasons why they decided to do what? Take a cut to their own salaries. Honestly, it's seeming like a public relations possibility, like it's almost a public relations opportunity for the government to do this. And hopefully this is also not just a front for them to be able to carry out any form of retrenchment that might come after this. If the ability to pay the workers' salaries start becoming difficult for the state government, they may have to start owing salaries a lot, and that may even result in laying people off or retrenchment or whatever like that. So it is possible that this is just for them to be able to say, well, even we, the officials in the place of authority, we took a hit to our own salaries as well. So it's going to be very difficult for you to criticize them at that point. So it could be a way for them to come ahead of what is going to happen in the future. Hopefully that is not the situation on ground. Hopefully they are just being good in their hearts. But again, we have to be very, very skeptical of our politicians in Nigeria. Generally speaking, anywhere in the world, politicians are very difficult to trust. Anyway, that's going to be all. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. It's really going to help the channel to grow. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be seeing you guys next time.